My name is Troy Smith, and this is my son Tyler Smith, and we are from Roanoke, Virginia.
And this is Oxford in America.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Oxford in America. Now we're taking off and moving on down through Central and Southern California. And our first stop is Monitor Pass. Monitor Pass is about 8,300 feet or about 2,500 meters tall. And in that climb, we really started to get a picture of some of the impacts of the forest fires in California.
It was our first high altitude pass, and we actually got above the smoke when we reached the top of Monitor Pass.
It was super smoky, and we finally crested through it like you're taking off in an airplane and got above it, and then we can see these great vistas out in the valley with all the smoke laying down in it. And that was pretty amazing. And of course, we also saw some of the firefighting equipment.
We were passing fire trucks. They were headed to the fire. And we thought we were going the other way and we were going to get out of the smoke, but little did we know it was going to follow us for a good while.
But we climbed down from Monitor Pass and reached down to 395 on the eastern side of the Sierra Nevadas and started heading south towards Southern California. And that was our objective for the entire day.
Over the next 2 days, Oxford would trundle over 350 miles south down Route 395. This would include a mix of roads, starting with a long stretch of divided highway that took us past a large base camp filled with firefighters and their equipment, gathering their forces to make one more push against the approaching wildfires. The road also took us past quiet and lonely places that time had seemingly forgotten. And we also got a chance to take a few shortcuts across the desert past our first sightings of Joshua trees.
During the day, Mike was trying to find our next camping spot for the evening, and you found a great place.
Right, it was Mammoth Campground, and we wanted to actually head back up the mountains to get some better views from where we were.
And get out of the heat of the valley.
And get out of the heat of the valley, but it seemed like the more we went, the more smoke we were seeing.
And we thought, no sense climbing the mountain where the smoke's at again. We'll just stay down the valley. So at the last minute, we changed our plans, didn't go to the Mammoth Reservoir for their campground, and just kept going down 395. And we finally stopped at this tiny, lonely place, Big Pine, California, and we stayed at this motel, the Bristlecone Motel, which we'll just leave it at that. I was introduced to what a swamp cooler was at the Bristlecone Motel. But we stayed there and had a great barbecue down at the Copper Top Barbecue that night. And just had a good night's sleep, good hot shower off of camping for a couple of days, and woke up the next morning and started checking our phones as you do, checking the morning news. And to our surprise,
we found that the campground that we intended to stay at had been surrounded by the forest fire, and they actually had to helicopter people out of the campground.
That was in all the news, the dramatic rescue. The California Air National Guard sweeps in with helicopters at 2 in the morning, and the campers at this campground are standing in the lake to stay alive from the forest fire, which has totally engulfed the campsite. So by that much, Oxford almost got burned up overnight. But for some reason, I don't know why we decided not to.
We drove right by the entrance to the campground, the road that went up to the campground, and made the decision then that we weren't going to go.
Driving south, we passed through the small town of Boron, California. which was interesting because this is the site of California's largest open pit mine for borax. And borax is used in detergents and perfumes and cosmetics. And it's just an interesting thing from days gone by. 20 Mule Team Borax was a product of the yesteryears that it was kind of interesting to drive by where that all came from. We drove by the 20 Mule Team Museum. Didn't have time to stop in, but it was just an interesting place to kind of drive through. And we're getting into Southern California, and we're getting in the desert, and it got warm.
Yeah, really warm. We were cooking. We rolled into Barstow, what, 6 o'clock at night? It was 106 degrees when we rolled into Barstow.
I don't know what that is in Celsius. It's just hot, okay? It's north of 40 degrees Celsius. Oxford's air conditioning, not working so well?
Not so well. We couldn't get enough forward momentum to get much flow through the cab. We had so much gear packed in there. We were covered in dust. Originally, I think we had planned to camp, right?
Yes, we originally planned to camp that night, and I think both of us looked at each other and said, hotel.
Hotel and a pool.
And we did stop at this roadside motel with a pool out front, and it's not a pretty sight. There's no video. We're sparing you from that terrible sight. But Mike and I sat in the pool, which was as warm as a bath.
Yeah.
And I sat there for at least an hour just trying to cool down.
It might have been bath water, but it felt pretty good. I'll tell you, it was nice and cool and relaxing, and a chance to get rid of some of the stiffness from sitting in the cab for 8 hours, 10 hours.
Long day.
As we sat in the pool at our luxury hotel, we could not help but notice how the smoke and the haze from the area forest fires remained with us. In fact, there was ash falling from the sky like a light snow as we sat in the pool. As nice as the pool felt, we still wanted to get out and explore some more of the area.
While we were in Barstow, we drove down some of the Route 66 routes. And it was getting later and it was getting dark and we had to use the headlights. And here's where we stumbled onto another weak spot of Oxford that was been troubling us for a long time. Oxford's battery really didn't last very long.
And the generator just barely put out enough electricity to keep the headlights going, sort of.
And so we only got to drive around for a short time before the battery went dead, the headlights went off, and we had to kind of limp it back into the hotel. Luckily, our friends in Minnesota had given us a battery charger to take with us. So we pulled the battery out of Oxford, which was dead at this point, carried it up to our bathroom in our hotel, and charged it overnight with the battery charger. So the next morning, Oxford was able to get started.
And the next morning, we did get started by packing everything back into Oxford and heading out to explore more of historic Route 66.
So, Barstow, California. At this point, we're 8 days and almost 1,000 miles into our journey. One of the things that's becoming a theme of our trip is forest fires. This map is a satellite image taken on September 5th, which is the same time as we met the bear in our last video, just past Lake Tahoe in the center of the map. Our path from Oregon all the way down to Barstow took us right through some of California's largest forest fires of the year. The August Complex Fire is a series of small fires that joined up into a single larger fire. The fire started in August and burned for almost 4 months. By the time it was done, it had consumed over 1 million acres of land, or just a little more than the entire county of Somerset, England. When Oxford was passing through, it was only about 1/3 of its total size and was quite a ways off our path, but it still provided us with plenty of smoke cover. Further south, the Jones, Sheep, Salt, and Slink fires were all smaller in size, but kept the smoke in pretty tight all around Lake Tahoe. The Creek Fire started just a few days ahead of us, but it quickly grew in size to about 38,000 acres, or about 2 times the total landmass of Singapore. This is the fire that overran the campground that we made the last-minute decision to skip. The SQF Complex Fire was another fire that consisted of a series of smaller fires that joined up into one. It was only about 175,000 acres, or the total land area of Merseyside, England, but it lay directly in our path. And as we pulled into Barstow, we were greeted by the smoke and ash from another fire, the Bobcat Fire, which is located to the south of us in the San Gabriel Mountains. I would like to tell you this marked the end of our time in the smoke, but it wasn't. In our next video, Oxford will leave Barstow and cross the Mojave Desert, where we'll see the impacts of the Dome Fire. We'll take a break in Las Vegas, Nevada, and then strike out across the Nevada Desert for some of our best scenery so far. Until then, we'll see you next time on Oxford in America.